Hello and welcome to the Public Square. I'm your host, Pastor Paul Goodridge, and I serve as the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Director for the South Central Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, located in Nashville, Tennessee. Each show, we deal with issues that affect not only civil but religious liberty, not only in the United States, but around the world. My goal is to inform about issues that directly and indirectly have an impact on everyday life, ignite meaningful thought and reflection, inspire my audience to action, and integrate faith principles in how we relate to others. Today, we're going to talk about a very challenging and sensitive and difficult topic, namely teen depression and suicide. We're going to look at some of the signs and symptoms, maybe some of the root causes, but then we're also going to look at some strategies that we can use for those who may be dealing with this difficult issue or the loved ones who may be trying to help. But before we get into the show, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to encourage you to share. I want to encourage you to hit the like button, especially if you are joining us via the social media, and also let others know that they can come and join the show. I know that we're not in our usual time, which is typically the second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. And so I know it's in the middle of the workday, but maybe you're watching the rebroadcast at a later time. But still, we want you to subscribe to our channel and to like and to share the information. And so with that being said, let's meet in the public square.
Skylar Moore's battle with depression began in the 4th grade, affecting her relationships and making her feel alone and isolated.
That's kind of what depression is like, being trapped and seeing the light, seeing like the end, but not knowing how to get to it.
Thanks to help from family, Skylar sought treatment and can look back on a time when her struggle was more difficult than it is today.
Growing up as a kid, I was, so like goofy and outgoing and everything. But then come to find out, people cared about like what you look like. And 4th grade, I realized that. I remember crying myself to sleep every single night, asking my mom why I was ugly. Throughout the years, it got worse. It went from just physical appearance to me, to social skills, to pretty much everything. My family noticed before I did. Like, I knew that I was sad. I knew, most people don't cry themselves, sleep every night, like I said, but my mom had to pay me $100 to go to a therapist. She's like, I don't know what's going on, but you're not acting like yourself. I was angry, irritable, just sad constantly. I was angry at her, but I was angry at pretty much everyone then. And I was like, no, I don't need to go talk to someone. I'm fine. I didn't know that they were going to help me with things that I knew I needed help with. I never really thought too hard about the future because this is going to sound really dark, did not think I'd be alive right now. I'm sorry.
The 2021 National Survey on Drug Use and Health. In 2021, an estimated 3.7 million adolescents aged 12 to 17 in the United States had at least one major depressive episode with severe impairment in that year alone. And this number represented 14.7% of the United States population aged 12 through 17. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a report in 2021, suicide was the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 through 14, and the third leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 15 and 24. In total, among all ages, there were nearly 2 times as many suicides in the United States as there were homicides. These numbers are alarming, and over the years, the numbers are growing. And so, here to help me kind of unpack this situation, I have 3 individuals who are experts in their own right. I want to introduce them at this time. First of all, we have Brian Anderson, who is a certified peer specialist, recovery educator, RAP facilitator, a certified whole health and wellness coach, mental health first aid trainer, and is also trained in trauma-informed care. Brian, welcome to the Public Square.
Thank you so much, Pastor. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, especially with this topic at hand.
Thank you. Next, we also have Deborah Hansen, who is a licensed professional counselor with experience in not only school counseling, but also community counseling and pastoral counseling. Deborah, welcome to the Public Square.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here today.
Thank you. And returning, we have Dr. Chinwe Efrube, who is a pediatrician who founded the Centered Youth Clinic and Consulting, which provides direct primary and specialty care services with community partnerships for positive youth development. Dr. Chinwe, welcome to the Public Square.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, always.
So you saw the introductory video and you heard some of the statistics that were shared. So let's kind of dive into this. What do we mean about when we talk about teen suicide or at least teen depression, which may manifest itself in suicide? And how is this type of depression different from, oh, I just don't feel well today? Brian, I'll begin with you.
Well, that's today. My prayer goes out to the young today. They have so many vices that are affecting them and that are against them. There's social media. They see everybody smiling and doing well, and in their reality, it's not that way at all. So everybody wants to be alone. We are created to be a social being, and we when we find ourselves not fitting in, we tend to go into a cocoon. We tend to not, we don't see no hope at the end of whatever tunnel that we find ourselves in. The biggest thing in my line of work that we find with young today is hopelessness. There's a statement that we use that says, when one lives without hope, the willingness to do is paralyzed. It is being disabled not by illness or disease, but by despair. So there's a sense of despair that's over a cloud-like atmosphere over the whole, not only this nation, but the whole world today. And the youth are getting it bombarded with it when it comes to the social media and media platforms, because they see everything is shining and everybody's happy and everybody's enjoying themselves, and it's not their reality. So first question that rises in their mind, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. Did I do something wrong? That's where depression sinks in, because they're looking at all that's going on and that's not them. So that is the starting point from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So another piece of this story is just the whole idea of adolescence. Adolescence is that time in our lives where kids, as a child, you're moving through adolescence and you are already paying attention to the way your body looks, and you're starting to question different things. Do I look good? Am I being accepted? When I was in the middle school, we often said that middle school was that time of puberty and that time of just questioning, what's life all about? Wanting to be accepted. A lot of times when you talk to kids that are older and you talk about elementary school, middle school, high school, oftentimes they say middle school was the worst, okay, because you're trying to feel accepted. So not only are you dealing with puberty, you're dealing with peer pressure. And so it's like this silent storm that comes to fruition. And if you're not fitting in, or you feel like you're so much different, it causes turmoil. And if you combine that with some of the way society has changed and the exposure kids are now being equipped with to see things that they shouldn't be seeing at this age, whether we're talking about social media or whether we're talking about television. I was recently looking at television the other night and I couldn't believe what was on before 9 o'clock. And now I'm dating myself, but I
Yeah.
remember a time that you didn't see certain things broadcasted before 9 o'clock. So it's a lot of different things that are bombarding our teens and young adults today.
Yeah, definitely all great points. Nowadays, it's starting to become really hard to know what is normal to go through and when does it become what we call pathologic. Like, when do we need to intervene? Because stress is part of life. Like to have a life without stress is almost like you're an inanimate object. And so I think it's one of those things where it is quite a challenge to introduce the idea of it's okay to have days that you're off, or days that you, like Miss Hanson mentioned, you feel that you're questioning a lot or having doubts about either your worth, your value, your acceptance in community, or feeling like you belong in certain areas, or if you're enough. But how long does that last? And so in our world, just the health world, we have 2 weeks is the go-to time frame to say, if you're having these feelings and they're happening almost every day and every day for 2 weeks or more, then it's time to seek help. And so help can look in different ways. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later. But I think it's given young people a time frame to accept some normal ups and downs, right? Or just knowing that there are valleys, there are hills. But how do you know when you're at a valley and you don't see that next step? You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet. Then it's time to at least stretch out beyond yourself to say, hey, what am I missing? But that's one thing to consider.
Okay. Forgive me, Roger. I'm hearing a double or delayed audio in my ear, so I'm not sure what that is. So Doc, you talked about the difference between, and maybe I need to take this off. We talked about the difference between, just okay, I'm having a bad day, and prolonged. But the reality is, there are a number of adults, especially from a different, the older generation, that will look at young people and it's like, listen, you have no stresses, you have no worries, you don't go out to work, you don't know what it's like. What are you so stressed out about? What do you need a mental, health day for, etc. This idea that young people aren't really, that what they're going through isn't real. Kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's a misnomer to some degree, because compared to at least our days, the young people in this generation are having to process a lot of information that comes to them a little faster, and they have more stimuli that they have to process. And so to some degree, we didn't have devices that could contact us at any moment of the given day, or share information at any given moment. And so their brain is having to process a lot, and are being required to articulate a lot more about what's going on with their environment, compared to, I think, the situations we may have been exposed. Not to say that anyone is better, not to say that anyone is lighter or greater, but to say it's different. It really is different. And it's hard for us to sort of downplay and say, well, you should be able to, because we just weren't exposed to a lot of things that they were exposed to now. I can't remember when I was in middle school, high school, that I even had any one threat of gun violence in the institution where I went to. Not to say that there aren't institutions and areas that is commonplace, but nowadays, like, to have someone be worried about someone coming into their school to shoot up students, like, I don't know if that was as commonplace as it is now, right? So some of that anxiety lives in some of these young people, and it can get them to feel like they just don't have any grounding anywhere they are. They don't feel safe. They don't feel secure. And then in terms of social media, again, like you can take a selfie here and someone in Italy can see it in the same time frame. And so having more people be scrutinizing certain things or activities, like they're having to do that more than we did in the past. We didn't hear about information unless we wrote a note to someone and then it got passed around. So in terms of them having to deal with just criticism or evaluations, I feel like it's different. And so I think we just have to take it at face value, ask them to what extent they either feel grounded or not, and then help work with them to be able to find out like what would be a best solution that works, that's helpful for them.
Brian, you mentioned earlier in terms of this overwhelming feeling of either hopelessness or kind of loneliness within the younger our young adults and our adolescents and teenagers. But then okay, but there's social media in which they have so many friends and so many likes and so many connections, etc. How can you be they can be so consumed with social media but yet feel so lonely and isolated?
That is a great question, and you would think they wouldn't, but it is so in abundance out there, this hopeless spirit. The cyberbullying that's taking place on these platforms is overwhelming. Yeah, they may get the likes and things like that, but they also get the cyberbullying that's taking place as well. And they are so uh, keen on how many likes did I get? Did anybody like me? Oh, so and so did not press the like button. Oh, I'm not being accepted, in other words. A kid just wants to be accepted. They want to be a part of something because, once again, the minds are not fully developed, their social interactions are not fully developed. So they need to be a part of something because they cannot, so to speak, sail on their own. So they need to be a part of a community. Community. I love that word, community. Without that, you can get lost in the shuffle. And once again, because you get pictures all on social media, everybody's laughing, everybody's coming together, everybody's family is happy, holidays are coming up, everybody's smiling, everybody's sitting around the table, everybody's enjoying a meal, but you. So how do you feel? And you make that internal. Something must be wrong with me.
I want to add to that by saying that, it's ironic that this is the most connected generation in history. And yet they deal with loneliness. And loneliness is about being connected, feeling that you're connected to someone. So, we all can kind of sing the praises of social media. I know I've been able to contact people I thought I would never be able to contact again in my life. So that's the good part about it. But there are social media platforms where kids get to see who's been left out. And so when you feel left out, there's this sense of being disconnected. And so that adds to it. And like Brian said before, this whole thing of friends and being liked. We know that our parents always teach us, you got your friends and you got your associates. For this generation, they've taken this whole friend thing to another level. It's a way of measuring how popular they are. And so with that, talking to kids about the realness of social media. And what I always say to children that I am addressing, no one gets on social media and says, this is I come from a rotten family. That's rare. So everybody paints themselves in a popular view or a tastier view. And that happens even with adults. Adults can get caught up with the scrolling and things like that. How did they get that car? Or, wow, I thought they dropped out. Or, wow, where do they live? And so if it has that effect on adults and we're mature, we have problem solving skills, decision making skills, then you can see why it is impacting many of our adolescents in such a negative way. So there's the positive of social media, and then there's that negative piece that some of our adolescents are having issues with.
So you talked about the difference between the effect it has on adults and the effect it has on adolescents, and I do want to encourage those of you who are watching us to go ahead, and if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, and so that we can allow our expert panel to help to address some questions or comments that you may have. But with this idea of the difference in terms of adults and maybe adolescents, I'm thinking about the pandemic. I'm thinking about which occurred right slap in the middle of our adolescence, growth and development and time, and a time where they should be socializing, a time where they should be getting together and, forming bonds and relationships, etc. Next thing you know, we have isolation, we have separation, etc. What have you seen that has been the effects on our adolescents as opposed to the effects of the pandemic on our adults? And any of you can respond to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to touch on that because I was working with a group of youth. I usually work with youth in different settings due to my not just my clinic but my consulting work, and we wrote an article specifically on this in terms of what happens when young people's lives are disrupted in the spaces that are meant to help their development. So, school, of course, is the main place that we think about. That's where they learn social cues.
Mhm.
Being able to work teamwork, being able to problem solve, being able to handle disappointments and resiliency for those who are in sports, physical ways of sort of coping and moving and developing. And so a lot of that was taken away from them, and they had to be confined into their homes. And to imagine that for about 2 years, we have I know specifically I have a student who's graduating, uh, and she said during the pandemic was when she had transitioned from middle school to high school. And so she missed a strong part of that early high school period before she graduated. And so she felt like she was leaving high school not fully prepared for the real world in some ways. She was very anxious, very had a hard time being able to just like look people in the eye because, again, it's just that sense of I didn't have a lot of exposure to that in high school. And even now, some of their classes are still like in front of a computer, even though they're in a classroom, they're doing work on computers. And so they're so used to having a bit remote communication with people around them. And so it's interesting when they go into college and or if they're living on campus or trying to get professional positions, like social skills are a strong eligibility criteria for hiring nowadays, right? And they're thinking about those who were affected by the pandemic and how we're going to recuperate, how are we going to recover some of those lost skills. And yeah, so it's just something to think about in terms of like academics, but extracurricular activities that they may not have had the opportunity to engage in. How are we trying to, re-engage them in those activities, either through church, faith-based institutions, or 4-H or other positive youth development settings. Because if they don't have those opportunities to practice these skills, then yeah, they're sort of like growing and transitioning into adulthood in isolation, even though they're around people around them. So, but that definitely has come up in different spaces where I've worked with young people.
If I can just add a caveat to that as well, just an additive to that, I saw a study that said a lot of the poverty-stricken youth depended on the lunch and the breakfast that took place at these schools. And as a result of schools not being open, they did not receive that, and that added to a sense of depression, added a sense of worthlessness and hunger, and all of that took place as well. So that was a major additive that I did not think about until I saw that study when the pandemic took place as well.
Well, so we've talked kind of about depression and I kind of want to delve into a little bit more in terms of what are some of the potential signs and symptoms of depression, and to what point does it lead to potential suicidal ideations. We have a question from Rosemary who said, as a teen suicide survivor myself, what signs can we look for in teens? And so let's kind of begin with depression. What are some of the signs and symptoms of somebody suffering from depression?
So, when I'm meeting with a person whose parent is suspecting that there may be depression going on, a lot of times you will hear the parents say that they are isolating themselves. They want to stay in their room. They don't want to eat dinner with the family anymore. So that's a key sign. Then the sleeping patterns. They may sleep a lot or not sleep at all. The eating is the same way. They may, increase their appetite may be, a lot different than it was. So whether that is that they're eating a lot more or whether they're eating a lot less. Um, Another factor may be giving away things or making comments. Um, it wouldn't be a big deal if I wasn't here anymore. If I wasn't here, nobody would really miss me.
Mhm.
So, a parent or an adult or even another adolescent that's hearing these comments might say, okay, um, that might be indicative of a person who doesn't want to be around. And one of the myths about suicide is that if I ask the person if they're considering ending their life, that I'm going to put that in their head. And that is not true. It's better to ask that question than to kind of assume that this child would not do it. So those are just a few that I see from my office visits with kids who are depressed. And depression doesn't always mean suicide ideation. Um, there are some who will, speak about ending their lives, and there are some students who are just have a low grade form of depression that doesn't rise to them ever wanting to self harm.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. And I just wanted to add their art, not just what they say verbally, but what they draw, not just what they write, but any particular. Um, some people just leave certain images or things that they put together. So just being observant about any changes in the young person's activities, and especially their friends. Their friends might also help give some insight too, because they'll talk more with their friends to some degree than they will to you. But yeah, most times the friends will alert.
And if I can add as well to this caveat of symptoms that you may notice, being very tearful, crying at the drop of a dime for no reason at all, seemingly no reason, but there's something there. There's something causing that. Being very irritable. Uh, Once again, isolating. There's not a one track or A, B, and C to this thing. It's
Mhm.
individualized, literally. There are some common denominators, but it's individualized in the just being silent. A person that's
Mhm.
talkative, and all of a sudden now they're not talking anymore. A person that doesn't talk, now they're chatting it up all the time. Just any changes in a person's behavior, like they said. And There's a statement that we use that says, "Listen to the whispers, so you won't have to hear the screams."
Mm.
You've got to listen to the whispers, so you will not have to hear the screams. There are whispers along the way.
I just want
Lauren.
to add one
Oh,
more
sorry.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, Schools, when we had the reason why I'm a therapist now is because of a student who committed suicide. In fact, there
Mm.
were three in our school in a year and a half's time. The first one wasn't really talked about. Okay, the principal didn't really give it a lot of attention. But when we had the second and the third, it warranted bringing in professionals. So one of the things that we know is that if a child knows someone who has committed suicide, then that might put that in their head that that is an option. So to be aware of friends and what's going on in the neighborhood, because sometimes when it's a suicide death, it's not always publicized as that. So being aware of what our children are being exposed to, how the school handles suicide, whether they let the parents know. I think that's happening more now, to let parents know when there has been a suicide. Definitely that was not the case about 10, 15 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's something to
And
be aware of.
yeah, I had a patient who had a device that was given to her from the school. And so any school devices, it looks like they have embedded certain ways of monitoring activity on that device. And so she was using a notes section, I think, in her Word document. And I think she was just writing her thoughts because, we encourage that. But it evolved. And so at one point of the thought, it had some, suicidal or thoughts and ideations. But later on, it's sort of like cleared. But it's like, she's like, I need to get it out of my head and I need to get it somewhere. And so she wrote it down in this device, and the school counselor was notified. And so then the parents are notified. And then it became this big thing. And so that's somewhat, I'm just mentioning that to say that it's good that the schools are now more aware that there are a lot of young people going through this, and they're trying to be creative in how they can identify it sooner, because it's true. 4 out of 5 teens who attempt suicide have been given some clear warnings somewhere, somehow. And so I think it's those around the young people who are now trying to be a little bit more on alert. On the flip side, I think it's also trying to, create safe spaces for the young persons to know that, they can get things out. Like, it's okay to be angry in a moment, but how do you allow it not to persist or let it feel like there is no other option, left for you? So I think it's that sort of like balance in how we allow young people to cope.
It's interesting. You said that you kind of, believe you quoted 4 out of 5 have,
Yeah.
attempted.
Well, they've given a sign before they
Oh,
attempted.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the sign. And so I'm thinking about, Lauren, in one of our those in the chat mentioned in terms of not bathing, I guess a change in hygiene habits. But I'm thinking about parents. I'm thinking about guardians who, they have enough to deal with in their own lives, and how they're also navigating life, etc. And maybe they may be missing the signs, or they may be misreading the signs, or maybe they are ignoring the signs, because especially within, let's say, parents within a particular culture. In which, no, tough it out, be a man, stop crying, pull yourself together, that type of thing, where the emphasis is on you don't really have a problem, and if there is a problem, just, deal with it, cope with it. But yet there are real struggles that our adolescents are going through. So how can we be more conscious of some of the signs that you're saying these individuals who are struggling are giving off, either intentionally or unintentionally?
I'd like to speak to that. I think that some of the places where we're more likely to hear information that is true and that people value that person giving the information. Case in point, churches. So when pastors devote time to this worthy topic, it often gives parents the ability to know something and to be able to express, this is what I'm seeing. Okay, I know in churches that I've visited and that I've attended, that oftentimes people will go up for prayer for things. My child is really giving me a hard time. I don't know what's going on with them or whatever. And so when a parent gets the information, like in a church setting, the pastor devotes time to talking about suicide. We know that September is Suicide Awareness Month, but it's a conversation that has to happen more often than that. We know that a protective factor is faith. And that's really interesting that scientists who, a lot of times we look at them as, seeing things from one perspective are saying this is a protective factor. When churches start to deal with it, when churches bring in speakers that can speak to children when they bring them to the children's church or the gathering of teens. So that is one way that parents can be alerted to the information, and also schools doing presentations on suicide awareness. Of course, you will always have, I think, a population of people that will think it can't happen, but at least they have the information in case they are alerted that something might be going on with their child. Another indicator is those grades. Remember, we talked about, extremes, how things change. The grades going down when a child has typically been an A, B student. And so parent alertness is important, and having the information given to them in the various settings that they are in would be essential to addressing suicide.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And just to piggyback on protective factors for teens, faith, and I think within faith, it's what's that mediator? Like what is it about that faith environment and community that is protective? And some of the studies will say it's just a positive adult role model, like like someone that is just in their life that they have to be able to go to whenever there's something that they are trying to process. And so, yes, community is a space where they can hopefully find that one or two or three positive adult. I mean, like you can't never have enough, but it's just having at least one of them, because young people, as we mentioned, their brains are still developing, their prefrontal cortex is still developing in terms of problem solving, and who better than an adult who's had life experience to give them perspective when they're faced in situations and they feel like, man, I don't see anything else. Like there's no, and then you talk to an adult, they're like, wait a minute, I've kind of been through something like that. And have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And it was like, oh, I can't tell you how many times young people say, I never thought about that. Oh, I didn't think that was, and so it's just something that allows us. And I mean, I remember when I was a young person, it builds on, neural pathways to be able to just think outside the box. But then that's how we all grow, all of us, even adults, as we're still learning.
Yeah. So listen, I want to take I want to take a break. And then on the other side of that, I know we've started, but I want to kind of delve more into potential strategies, solutions, some of these protective strategies to help deal with this subject. So let's take a break, and we'll be right back. And I'll begin with you when we get back, Brian.
Skylar Moore's battle with depression. Once thinking about her life's end and writing goodbye letters to family, Skylar is now excited about her future. Successful therapy sessions and antidepressant medications have changed her for the better.
I most changed since 9th grade, my senior year of high school. People recognize it. People see it. No one knew who I was freshman year of high school. Didn't have any friends. Senior year, I was on the prom court and the homecoming court, and I had pictures with people. I had all these friends.
She uses her experience to help others at a drop-in center with the transitional support program called Tailored that provides services to young adults without a support network. Skylar's challenges and successes help her relate with the troubled young adults who come to the drop.
Someone will tell me something tell me one of their darkest secrets, and a lot of people have opened up to me, and they'll tell me these things, and they're so worried about what I think, and I'm like, me too. I've been there. I've self-harmed. I was right where you were. It'll be okay. And that's so, it doesn't sound like something to, that you'll believe. I still have lots of struggles. I still have panic attacks. I still am self-conscious about what I look like, but it's nothing like what it was. Sharing what I went through now is very surprising. I didn't think that I would ever be here. I didn't think that I would ever open up this much. But at this point, everyone I work with, all my friends and family, know what I've gone through. And I'm not embarrassed in the slightest because it was not my fault. The only thing I am embarrassed about is not seeking help sooner.
So, Brian, we have a question from Kimberly who says, I feel like bullying is still not given the significant weight it should. I guess, i.e., teens commit suicide because of bullying. Can you speak to better strategies as to respond to suicide, either from a parent's perspective or from a teacher's perspective? And I know you wanted to share something before we had the break.
Well, I want to directly go to the question at hand. When it comes to bullying, we need to be more proactive than reactive. Too often, we wait till something happens and then address the situation. But this is a topic that needs to be addressed on a regular basis because this just didn't start. This has been going on for eons. Since the beginning of the school system, there have been bullying, and people's lives have been altered for the worst when it comes to this. So my suggestion would be being more proactive, having these discussions, not only with the kids, but inviting their parents in, because there's need to be a strategic strategy in place. We just can't do it with the kids and leave the parents out. There's got to be a whole health approach when it comes to this initiative. So having more dialogue about this topic when it comes to bullying, because once again, it's not going to stop. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So either we can be proactive or reactive, and we know what happens when we are reactive.
So I want to drill down a little bit because you said, we have to have strategies. Help us. What are those strategies? And, between yourself and also Deborah and Dr. Chinwe, what are those strategies? We need help. What tools? What can we do specifically?
I love utilizing peer support. Let me show you the definition of peer support. Peer support is help given to those in need by another who has gone through a similar trauma or challenge. I'm going to say that again because that's going to resonate. Peer support. Peer support is help given to those in need by another who has gone through a similar trauma or challenge. Who better to give the message of hope to individuals that have gone through the same exact thing and made it through and has developed different strategies and coping mechanisms that they could share. Having a peer support group where individuals can come together and share their experiences and how they made it through, and invite the teens into this session so that they can hear, they can pick up. And I write about this in my second book. It's called Take What You Can Use and Leave the Rest. Everything is not going to be for everybody, but I guarantee you, if we consistently use this methodology of peer support, something is going to resonate with at least more than half of the individuals that is there. Using peer support, also using developing a program where you could bring in outside, like you said, speakers and share different resources. This has got to be a drilled down effect because it will not last. We just talk about it now, and the next year we talk about it again. It must be consistent. So my number one strategy would be peer support, utilizing the power of the peer. And when it comes to these topics, because it works. I'm not just saying something that I read about in a book. I know it works for sure because statistically it's been proven, and I've utilized it myself.
Deborah, what can we do? What strategies can you share with us? We're looking for answers.
So, one of my jobs, I was a school counselor. And one of the things that I liked about being a school counselor is that I was allowed to go in the classroom and teach a lesson every month for my grade level. What I know is that schools have to welcome outside help because they can't do it by themselves. Oftentimes, school counselors are not performing in that role anymore. But having regular meetings with classes to explain, to do videos, to do role plays, to have interactive activities where they get to see what you're telling them. Because a lot of our children, what I have found, and I know the pandemic gets blamed for a lot of stuff, but a lot of our children don't have empathy. And that's why they're able, I believe, sometimes to do something to someone and not even understand that the impact of what they've done on for that person. And so empathy is not always taught in school, but empathy is part of some parents' values. So I think even parents expressing what their beliefs are, empathy, treating another person the way you want to be treated, those are very important values to instill in our children. When we come to the school system, having counselors return to classroom guidance, because one of the things that I know for sure is that a child hearing it one time, it's not effective. But if I'm hearing the same message every month from an individual who's doing classroom guidance that incorporates values that everyone agrees upon are good values to have, that's important. And I would also say with schools, it is difficult to go after every bully. But when you have a child that is repeatedly bullying another one, go hard. Go hard. And that's not to say that I condone putting them out of school, but we can have a soft response to someone who is a repeat person who offends others or who bullies others, because the lives of the others are just as important as that child getting their education. So a number of approaches I think would impact the number of bullying cases that go unattended, I guess is a good way of putting it. Because I think sometimes parents feel like when they report bullying, nothing happens. That child is still riding the same bus as my child. That child is still in the same class. Well, it's not like you can just take a child out of a class or take them off the bus. But if the school has a process of dealing with bullying, they have to adhere to it to the fullest so that children understand, if you bully another individual, this is the course of action that could happen to you. So,
Yeah, no, this is great. This is great. Um, a couple of things where it it's more about the prevention aspect of this topic, where some parents or caregivers might say, well, my child seems doing that, they're doing okay, right? How can I really be able to get ahead of it? And one of the things that I do in my clinic, because when young people come for well checks or well visits, we always do different screening questionnaires for them. And some of the questions are, somewhat hypothetical, almost like role playing. Because we might ask them, have you been bullied? And they may say no. I don't necessarily stop there. I said, well, what if you were bullied online? How would you handle that? Because the whole idea that adults have a little bit more wisdom is because of experience, because either they live through it. But if we're trying to develop some of those skills in young people, sometimes we have to make it up and put them in make believe role playing situations to see what do they already know, where is their mind currently, and how can we either be more observant of object lessons. Maybe something happens on TV that can be a topic of discussion, like it could be an icebreaker or primer for us to then say, oh, that happened, what do you think about that? Or if that has that happened in your school or with someone that or if that happened to you, how would you handle it? It helps them start to even prime that part of their brain for problem
Mhm.
solving. Then you can say, okay, well, she has this amount, or he or she has this amount of knowledge. Maybe I can just work to develop the rest, or help her develop the rest, or him to develop. So role playing, honestly, is a really good way to assess the status of where your young person is in terms of what they could or could not be able to manage. And then the next point I was going to touch on is that peer support, social support is very, I mean, hands down, like, I think it's a very important opportunity where, if you have a young person who has either expressed those thoughts that if they've expressed it, or their behavior is giving you signs that they may be going through depression or having thoughts of harming themselves, is to just seek online support, like NAMI, the National Association for the Mental Health Institute. I forget what the H.
Yeah.
I always forget it. Forgive me, but NAMI is really good. They have a lot of tools available for families to look through. And they also have opportunities for online group support or local group supports. You can search for either facilities or activities near you to have the young people, be in contact with others who have gone through the same things. Because they may not know anybody in their own sphere of influence or their own network, but
Mhm.
bet you believe there's somebody in their area who's gone through the same thing. So some of those sources, and of course, seeking counselors at school or healthcare settings, can be able to provide that opportunity to have some peer support.
So I want to ask you specifically, Dr. Chinwe, and then I'm going to ask each of you. But so, Dr. Chinwe, I specifically want to ask you to kind of talk about the role of medication within this whole discussion. Is there a place for medication? And then I want all of you to think about, because each of you are working within organizations. Either you founded an organization, you have you're partnering with an organization, you are part of an organization. I want you to share what your organization is, what it is, what it is doing, and what resources it provides for individuals who are struggling with this issue. But Dr. Chinwe, if you could just address the role of medication within this discussion.
Sure thing. I'm very cautious in talking about medications, especially in certain communities, because a lot of young people that come to me, their caregivers, when I have the one-on-one with them first, their first thing is, well, I don't want to put them on medicine. I just want to just get them help. And I welcome everyone's sort of preferences and you know what their goals are for treatment plans. But one of the things that I offer them is to really think about this as like a health condition. It's a mental health condition, but even physical conditions, right? There's some things that you can do what we call supportive care. Like, you can do stuff at home, but when it gets to a severity that your home care stuff ain't doing nothing else for it, you either need an antibiotic, you need to go to the hospital, get IV fluids if you're dehydrated. Like, you need intensive intervention if the severity has reached that point. And so
Mhm.
what I ask them to consider is to say, just have an open mind. My first go-to is lifestyle medicine. Like, hands down, it's really thinking about how you eat, how you move, how you connect socially, how you come out and get sunlight, because even sun itself allows positive hormones to circulate through your body. Physical activity allows your dopamine and epinephrine, all that, to circulate easily throughout and go to the right parts of your brain, not just your mood, as emotional parts of your brain. So all of that is important first. And so, but I always say, don't just stick there. Don't do that for months and months and months and months and months and end, and then wonder why you're not seeing improvement. So it's really important to really have an open mind to consider mental health strategies and therapies and management the same as physical. Like, you wouldn't just sit on a sore wound that is necrotic and still
Mhm.
saying, I'm just going to put, like hydrogen peroxide on it. Let's do this. No, you're not, because you're going to want to make sure you find healing. So, and it's hard to do that because you can't see the mental transitions. But I always say, It's about time. So most places will say 6 weeks of psychotherapy is helpful. But if you get to 6 weeks and you're not seeing the improvement that is expected, then it's time to consider medication. Why? Because psychotherapy requires a certain level of engagement. It requires you to even have the energy to implement the skills that you're learning. And if you can't even get up out the bed, you can't even take a shower, you can't do all the basic life activities, daily activities of living, they call it, then it's really going to be hard for you to use cognitive behavior therapy anywhere or dialectical. Like it's just going to be hard for you to do that. And so, do you need some hormonal sort of support through medication that can allow those, energy levels to be up so that then you're alert enough to learn the skills? And I always tell my teenagers, I say, sometimes think of it as a crutch, medication as a crutch. It's there to kind of get you to a healing point, but it doesn't have to be there forever. If you learn the skills, maybe learning the skills can allow you to then, let go of the crutches and, you be like mentally sort of like stable. But the medications are varied. In my clinic, I usually do a genetic testing first, and it's not like blood. It's a swab of the inner parts of their cheek. And we use a service that looks at all the different types of medications for mental health and sees if there are any sort of contraindications to which ones won't work as well. Because, yeah, there are some medications that there's a black box warning for adolescents that says if they take this, it might give them the energy to then act out any suicidal thoughts that they already have. So we have to be careful that medications are not the only answer. So, but it's important to just be able to assess which medications would be right fit based on your genetic makeup, and start with the least resistance at the place of least resistance, and then be open that that one medicine may not be the right one. You might need to switch to a different one that works better with your system. But that's kind of our go-to for medications, but it varies.
Okay. Brian, tell us about your organization, what you do, and what resources are available for individuals who may be struggling with either depression or suicidal ideation.
Well, my organization is named Beautiful Scars Inc., and our motto is "Come to us with open wounds and leave with beautiful scars." The reason why this organization was created is because you're looking at a person that has a history of homelessness, molestation, mental illness, drug addiction, 3 times jail, 2 suicide attempts, lockdown inpatient treatment. But my story did not end there. Today, I'm a 3 time author. I'm a 1 time best selling author. My books have made their way to South Africa, Japan, the UK, Scotland. I've gotten messages from those places. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for sharing your story. So, Beautiful Scars is out in the public sharing that story of hope and inspiration, because we've realized and we've learned in my line of work that there are 5 key recovery concepts: hope, personal responsibility, education, self advocacy, and support. Once again, they are in order of importance. Hope is the number one thing that a person needs on their road to recovery. Beautiful Scars is all about fostering that hope to individuals, whether it be a church setting, whether it be a business setting. And I partnered with the Faith Based Mental Health Initiative under the leadership of Charlene Flagg, and we go out to different places and organizations and churches and things like that and give that message of hope and inspiration to individuals. And when I tell you, the Holy Spirit shows up and shows out every single time when it comes to sharing my story of how I made it through those storms of life. Man, God is such an amazing God. I'm sitting here about to bust, literally, because when I get to talk about this topic and this subject matter, I know from whence God brought me from. So Beautiful Scars is out in the community, sharing that story of hope and inspiration, sharing my books with individuals, sharing the tools and the techniques, evidence-based tools and techniques that I have learned and became certified in. And I have developed some tools and techniques on my own, sharing those with the individuals. And once again, the most important, letting individuals know that there is hope. Because once again, that statement that I said, when one lives without hope, the willingness to do is paralyzed. In other words, they can't even move without hope first. It is being disabled not by illness or disease, but by despair. Let's give hope. Let's bring hope back into this picture so that people can get moving again. That's what Beautiful Scars does. Go all over the place sharing that message of hope.
Give me that website one more time.
www.beautiful-scars.org.
Okay.
www.beautiful-scars.org.
All right. Deborah, tell us about your organization, what you do or what it does, and what resources it can give for individuals within this area.
So, as you stated before, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and oftentimes my clients come from hospitalization. And so when I have clients that are coming to me, and most of the time they are young people, which is so interesting for me because I thought going through private practice, I'd only work with adults, but that has not been the case. And I guess the fact that I was in the school system for about 30 years kind of contributes to me having the larger caseload of adolescents. But when I get children, young people in my office and they're battling depression, I go about teaching them problem solving skills, decision making skills. I do parenting with their parents or their guardians because sometimes parents are lost as to what to do. And so I might have a typical parent who's taken away all types of things that the kid likes to do, and the kid is left with nothing. And so one of my approaches is let's see if the child can earn things back. And because I know that self-esteem is part of, can be a part of just this whole depression. And so building that child up, teaching them skills, teaching the parents skills. I often get referrals from doctors also. And so when I get those referrals, I'm writing out a treatment plan that I think will work to get them back to understanding that they can solve the problems that have kind of contributed to their lack of self-worth or lack of them feeling worthy of staying here on earth. And so that's one aspect. And then I work with churches, equipping them with the information that they need to work with young people. And so that's my story.
Okay. And the group or organization that you work for or work with?
Yeah, my email address or my name is Rafa House, Rafa Healing House Counseling.com.
Okay. And just spell that for us. Rafa, RAPHHAH.
PH, wait, RAPHA, so no second H. House
Okay.
Counseling.
Okay. Rafa House Counseling. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because sometimes people think I'm saying Waffle House Counseling, but it is Rafa.
Okay. All right. All right. And Dr. Chinwe, your I think I had mentioned it earlier. Centered for, just remind me.
Sure. It's Centered Youth Clinic and Consulting. So the website is centeredyouth.com. Centered is in past tense, centeredyouth.com. And essentially, we see newborns up to age, and then youth up to age 25 years old. So I see a lot of college students. We offer routine pediatric adolescent healthcare. So they'll get their well visits, they'll get their, sick care for sore throat, broken leg, things like that. But one of the things that we're trying to do differently in healthcare is include health promotion activities. And so we have a group called Centered Youth Groups, and it's based on a model from the Center and Healthcare Institute that looks at group visits as a way to provide support and healing for patients. And so the Center and Healthcare Institute used to have, well, they do still have centering parenting. So it's parents who have the same ages of kids, and they schedule appointments together. And they found that those babies have better outcomes because their parents went to the visits together. They shared, tips together. They did that for centering pregnancy. So I worked with them to develop something for teens and adolescents to say, what if we're able to invite young people to either schedule their well visits together or just meet. So we have an online space that they meet first, but we would have events in our clinic that allows them to come together over fun things. So June 30th, we have D&D, Dine and Design, where we're going to have clay, and the young people are invited to make any clay, objects, but we're going to be talking about like life. So financial health, social health, what's going on, even current events, but we're going to create spaces in the healthcare setting that allows them to sort of lean on each other for advice, but also have a health expert that will be there. So sometimes I invite guest speakers. I'll have a licensed clinical social worker or a counselor to come and talk about how they manage their mind. I'll have our sports therapy practitioner that comes and talks about how they manage, how they move. I have a dietitian that comes and talks about how they manage their foods. And then I talk about how they manage their time and their dime. So time management causes a lot of stress for people. Money management causes a lot of stress for people. And so I provide my perspective on that as an entrepreneur and businesswoman. So it's just us just really leaning on each other, and then they have tips and strategies like you guys have mentioned that we have no idea are an option. Like they have new apps that they use for coping that I may not even know that even exists, but it's them sharing the resources and tools that are relevant for their time, and then any sort of like back end information about like the how, the why, like why does this happen, or is it common for this to happen? I provide that, or the health experts provide that to give them some sort of like reference point. So that's what we do. We're about to actually, I just got the design from my youth volunteers in the clinic. We're going to post it on the website hopefully by this weekend. But we invite our local youth to, and you don't have to be a CYCC patient. So CYCC stands for the Centered Youth Clinic and Consulting. So you don't have to be a CYCC patient to join our D&D designs. D&D events, Dine and Design events. But that's something that we offer.
Okay,
And it's
thank you.
part of my way to bring that I used to work, I still do work in church and youth ministries. And I just realized every week we are exposed to young people to be able to impact some of these skills. And it's a shame that not all young people have faith-based institutions that can offer them, those opportunities. And so I'm trying to bring that into my clinical setting so that, more people have access to it. It's a work in
Great.
progress.
Great. No, great work. Listen, as we begin as we look to close this show, and I know that the topic is way bigger than the time that we have allotted to it. And it's something that needs to, in various settings, not just be a one-off event or one time that we talked about it. I know that, Brian, you had talked about this. It can't just be we deal with it today and then a year from now we mention something and then 2 years, but something that has to be ongoing. But as we close this program, I want to ask each of you, what's the takeaway that you want our audience to know or to do or to be empowered with? And I'll begin with you, Brian.
The takeaway that I want individuals to know that all is not lost. There is still hope out there. There are still people doing the great work. Too often, mental illness and addictive disease gets lost in the shuffle when it comes to churches. We don't want to talk about it. Let's just shuffle it under the rug and we'll pray for the sister. Everything gonna be all right. Pray for your brother. Everything gonna be all right. Frederick Douglass made the statement that I love. Frederick Douglass said, I prayed for 20 years and received no answer until I started praying with my legs. That means he got off his knees and went and did something about it. We've got to stop talking about this, and we've got to start doing something about it. You have people and organizations in your mix that can assist in a mighty way. Let's get the job done. We're losing our youth. And for the adults that are still broken, still wounded, I would suggest that each and every one of you go get an ACE study done, ACE, Adverse Childhood Experience Test done. Here's the thing about the adverse childhood experience. Back in the day when I took this training, there were 10 questions, and you just answer yes or no to. And they say that if you get 4 or more yeses, you are more prone to promiscuity. You are more prone to suicidal ideation. You are more prone to incarceration. You are more prone to early mortality. just by learning where you are in the A study, you can get the education that you need. You can get the tools and the techniques that you need. This thing, there are so much that can be done. Open the door and let's get it done. My father, Pastor Herb, the late great Pastor Herbert Anderson, he prayed for me. He took me to E.E. Cleveland, who prayed for me. And I believe their prayers kept me alive. But it wasn't until I met a man named Curtis Graham. I write about him in my books. Curtis Graham was a man that had been through what I was going through at the time. Change came. Utilize the people who have gone through, and God has allowed them to continue to live, to bring back this message of hope. Use them. Don't be afraid of them. Use them. God has placed them here in your midst to be utilized. And please forgive my rant. I'm passionate about
No.
this thing.
No,
good.
absolutely. Deborah, what do you want to leave our audience with?
I want to leave a message with parents, to be empowered to have those conversations, not only with your children, but even your children's friends, and understand that we are a village, that it takes a lot to raise a child in these days and times. And so reaching out to the various organizations that are there and keeping your child connected, even with some sports and other activities that we know foster a resiliency in children.
And Dr. Chinwe?
Yeah, it's hard to follow after all these great words of wisdom, honestly, because I concur on all parts. I think, if anything I'm learning is to be open to learn, just really being open to learn, because young people are evolving, and they're evolving with the society as well as the society is evolving, right? And so it's the idea to say, what may have worked for me to cope back then, or even now, may not be what will work for them. So how do we create that safe space for them to just be open to just let us in? And I say us as like the caregivers on young people, but then a word to the young people, just, know that there's somebody out there that cares about your well-being. You're not alone at all. You're not alone. It may feel like it, but you're not alone. So it's a matter of being observant about who's asking about you, who's asking how your day is. That's probably their opportunity to want to know more. So, you can't say, oh, it was good. Day was fine. It was all right. They really, really probably do want to know more. And I promise you, if you just open up and just share, you'd be surprised how much they'll want to know, and just say, let's make this a routine. Let's make this a time to hang out, just to hear more about what's going on in your world. But they probably want to follow your lead. So just go ahead and do it, and be courageous, but know that somebody really does care about what's going on in your life.
All right. And I would be remiss without saying this, and I'm going to ask if we can put up this graphic. If you are struggling in this area, or if you know somebody who has suicidal thoughts, then call 988. That's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Call somebody. Don't just keep it to yourself. Let them know that you're struggling. And there is help available. I want to thank each and every one of you for giving of your time and your expertise in terms of helping. We're just starting to scratch the surface of this subject. But again, part of my goal is to inform, is to inspire, to ignite, and to have people know something about it and inspire them to do something about it. And so, if for yourself or for a loved one, there are resources out there. Take advantage of those resources. Let's get help. Let's do it together, and let's get better. Thank you so much for each one of you for being a part of this. And we'll be right back with some closing thoughts after this quick break.
Skylar Moore's battle with depression began.
So again, I want to thank our panel for joining us and for dealing with this very sensitive topic. And I want to let you know about our next episode. Our next episode is back to our regular time and our regularly the second Thursday of the month and at 7 p.m. And we're going to be dealing with the topic, the state of the United States. We would have just celebrated Independence Day, July 4th, and there's a lot that's happening within the United States. And we kind of just want to drill down a little bit in terms of prophetically what's happening with the United States, politically what's happening with the United States, from a cultural perspective, from a historical perspective, from a health perspective. And so please join us next Thursday, July the 11th at 7 p.m. Central Time, again on our South Central Conference YouTube or Facebook page, as well as the South Central Conference website. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this. Please share this with somebody. Share the link. Let them know that, hey, there's a program, there's something that we're trying to do, and maybe it's been a blessing to them. I also want to refer you to our YouTube page where you can see previous episodes that we have done within the public square. And hopefully one of those topics will be a blessing to you. And subscribe to our channel so that when we broadcast, you'll be able to immediately come on with us. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the public square.